Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with symcotraining. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I will start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Firstly, I want to say thank you again to everyone that's listening to this podcast. It just keeps growing and growing. And we're going to urge you to do something. This is one of the episodes that you're going to want to share with all your service advisors. This is an episode that you want to send out to all the service managers within your dealer group or your manufacturer, because I'm joined with Jack Allman today. Now, Jack is the co-founder and he's the Chief Commercial Officer for Bumper. Now, this is a company that's really helping service departments maximize every single result. And I think this is so important because everyone knows we're going into tough economic times. Everyone knows that people put things off when things get tough. And one of the surveys I've seen recently, things people put off when things get tough is number one, gym memberships. And actually, that makes sense. If you want to save some money, okay, people put that off. Number two is DIY projects. People put that off when it's quiet. But the third thing people put off when economic times get tough is servicing a car. And actually, it's not just stopping servicing the car. It's actually what do they spend on the car. So this episode is all about how to maximize, upsell, and everything in the after sales department. So Jack, it just leaves me to say, welcome aboard.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Delighted to be on. Thanks for having me.
So Jack Allman, I've got to say, I first met Jack when I was working for a company called BTC, and that's where I cut my teeth and learned how to be a sales trainer with a man called Guy Allman. And Jack, I understand you know Guy quite well.
I do indeed. Yeah, he's my father. Yes, obviously known you for quite a number of years as well.
Yes, Jack, it's going to make me feel very, very old, but I think I first met once. We were in a restaurant, a lovely Italian restaurant in Nantwich. There's a whole lot of trainers there, and they're telling jokes. And Jack, you said, "I've got a joke," and so we all said, "Go on, Jack, what is it?" And you said, "Guy Allman." It got the best laugh there. Now, you might not even remember that because you were 10 or 12 years old. And Guy, I hope you're listening to this, but I remember that very well. Hey, Jack, tell us about how you got in the motor trade, though. Where did you cut your teeth in the motor trade?
Yeah. So I think that's my dad is a perfect kind of segue into that. So probably like a number of people in automotive, the introduction was through family. So whether that's you follow them into dealerships or affiliated businesses in the industry. I worked for my parents' company within automotive. Prior to that, I did an economics degree and a sales and marketing grad scheme in the brewing industry, actually, so completely unrelated, and then took the opportunity to join my parents' business, which, as you've touched upon, started out life as a training company and then very much became a tech company. So they had two platforms, one called Auto VHC, which is obviously most related to what we're going to talk to today around after sales and kind of process and digitalizing after sales. And then more latterly, Inquiry Max, which was a lead management platform. So that was my route in. Grew up talking about dealer groups around the dinner table as a school child, and very much kind of led me into what we're doing today.
Okay. Well, listen, I want to go back before we get into what you're doing today. Listen, with Auto VHC, you've seen lots of service departments. You've seen lots of service managers. You've seen lots of service advisors. Can I ask you, during that time there, what separates the good from the great in that after sales department? Or if you're listening in America or Australia, the service department?
Yeah, they've all got different names for it.
Yeah.
So I think from our point of view, what we recognize is there isn't one single silver bullet. And it's basically recognizing that you need kind of two or three key strategies to be working in harmony with each other and in sync with each other. So I guess the two most fundamental ones are marrying a kind of a human stroke physical process with a digital process. Now, obviously, I'm quite biased, like you say, the Auto VHC background, that EVHC background, and what we do now at Bumper, would lead me to talk about the kind of digital side of it, but fully accept that you need both a great person and a great platform to work together in order to create a great service department. And I think we're seeing that accelerate more and more, certainly in the earlier days of auto VHC, which was digitalizing a paper-based VHC process. There was teething problems, there was early adopters, and there was some that were slightly more slow to adopt that. But what we've seen is that has now become the standard, but it still sits on top of a great people process. You still need very efficient techs. You still need really productive service departments in order to price the parts up, ensure you've got parts in stock. And all of that then converges to create a nice digital process. But again, recognizing that not all drivers will be receptive to a purely digital or even a purely physical approach. So I guess much talk is about selling cars, right? The whole clicks and bricks approach. Or I actually think it's quite similar in after sales, that you need a digital and a physical way to interact with customers. You know, we're seeing that high adoption of remote check-in, a fully digital process where you may not even speak to anybody at all. I think Tesla's probably the kind of best exponent of that. But we know that, to generalize, it might be some older customers are less comfortable with a fully digital approach. And equally, there might be a younger audience that simply don't want to talk to someone. They want to book in remotely. They want to approve work completely digitally, and they're happy to pick their keys up from a key box potentially. But it's about being able to serve all of those customers with what is probably an existing, if not smaller, resource within your dealership. So you do need to make efficiencies, and of course that's what every business is looking to do. And from our point of view, it's about recognizing that those two things need to work in harmony. And obviously there's lots of associated kind of practices around that, around marketing that you do, the customer base that you serve. But for us, you need to be doing both of those two things excellently, and one is not an entire substitute for the other. They very much complement each other.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because there's lots of talk about the Kazoos of the world, Carvana in America, their share prices down 97%. When we're recording this, you've got Kazoo in the UK, for people listening around the world, floated for, I think it was 6.5 billion. I checked this morning, their market cap's something like 112, I think they're down to. And they talk all about just all this whole digital approach. And there's lots of talk about it's actually clicks and bricks. It's the people element. And I just think on the after sales side of it, I personally love these key boxes. I love the idea that turn up. I don't have to speak to Jenny. I can drop my car off. There's all my information. I can get on with work because I need to do it. Having said that, I'm sure that there's some people say, no, I always speak to Jenny. Why can't I speak to Jenny, explain what is wrong with my car? I suppose it's getting that balance there.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and that's the beauty of doing both things as well as you possibly can, because actually one will enhance the other. So like you say, to use Jenny as an example, if she loves talking to you about her car, she's bought multiple vehicles from you over the years. By having a really good digital process, that actually frees up more time to speak to Jenny in this example. If you can serve that whole cohort of customers digitally that want to do so, your service teams, you can keep existing headcount. They actually have much more time to put their arm around Jenny and discuss her vehicle to the nth degree. So you actually enhance both customers' experience through your workshop. So for us, as I say, you need to do both, and I don't think you can ignore either. And if you do ignore either, you are genuinely cutting off or certainly impinging the experience of a cohort of your customer base. So I think you've got to consider both in equal measure.
I've got to say, talking about those service advisors, anecdotally, we always would know, we'd listen to a service advisor, and you could hear on the call where they're speaking to a customer and saying, well, you need to get the tires, and they got 3 millimeters on them, and they're going to be 270, and we need to get the brakes done. And you can almost hear that the service advisor was apologetic about the prices. The service advisor had already made the decision themselves the customer wasn't going to buy this. And when you talk about anything that had to be offered, they're apologizing for it. And what I found really interesting is with these systems where people just drop the car off and they leave the keys there, they're talking to a machine, and the machine says, do you want a 1 liter top up of oil? Yes, please. Do you want the car fully valeted while you're here today? Go on then. Actually, do you want to do this? So that tells me that so many times the service advisors are making the decision for the customer. If a machine will ask the customer and say, go on, it's kind of like McDonald's this might be an oversimplification, but you go through a McDonald's drive-through, you wind your window down. How old am I? You push the button to wind the window down and say, can I have a Big Mac meal? They say to every single person, do you want to go large? Now, they don't just say that to the big fatties. They say it to everyone, and no one gets offended. And these machines, they offer it to everyone. I want to get your views. Do service advisors make the decision for the customer far too often in that whole...
I think, sorry to cut across you, I think it's probably fair to say that happens in a lot of scenarios. Obviously, not in all cases, but I think it's very easy in that role to feel like you're potentially dealing with a distressed customer. I think it's probably acceptable to say that the average person doesn't put a little pot of money away just in case the car goes wrong. Obviously, they may have service plans, etc., which deal with the scheduled maintenance, and there's obviously some extensive warranty products out there. But from our perspective, what we see is generally there is a degree of caution, nervousness around talking to the customer about the work that is due. And I think you phrased it quite well. Often it's look, I'm really sorry to say you need tires replacing, etc. And it probably does take quite a confident service advisor to rephrase that in a confident manner to say, look, the great news is we've done a full check. The vast majority of your vehicle is in good working order, i.e. the green items. There's some that need attention in perhaps 2 to 3 months' time, and there's some that need attention today. We really advise you to get that done, etc., etc. That probably takes quite a bit of experience and confidence. I think, our product is just a kind of, bias, so I'm going to kind of divert us back to ourselves here, but our product, I think, really amplifies the ability to have a very positive conversation around that, knowing that the customer has the ability to spread the cost of an unexpected cost. For me, puts out a potential fire there. It eases both the service advisor and the driver there. It probably provides peace of mind to both. And from our point of view, because there is a caution and a nervousness around telling customers about the work that's required on their vehicle, we do see they probably become quite selective in what they believe the customer will say yes to, or it's absolutely only necessary, or probably have to think quite quickly, I wonder if I can do some goodwill here and potentially discount the work. Again, the McDonald's approach is an interesting one. Not only do you get the same things offered every single time, you can't get discount through that journey either, which is for many perhaps a path of least resistance. Obviously, there's a time and a place for it, but again, we really try to advocate kind of mitigating the use of discounts. We don't believe it solves that problem for either of those two parties. It's probably a nice to have to not only pay 10% today, but you're still paying 90% of something that you were not expecting. So again, going back to that process, we've worked really hard to embed our product into the VHC tools, the DMSs, the online check-in, whether that's a physical terminal or just a remote journey, online service booking. And I think it goes back to that kind of broader process question of when and how do you talk to customers about what you'll do that day. I think the key thing is no surprises as we see it. So, and that's not just relating to kind of how you're going to pay today, but very much about the journey for their car today, i.e., first of all, we'll do a vehicle health check on your vehicle. Once that's done, you'll receive a video. It'll have a report of the work that's due. Obviously, if available, that work will be priced up. You can choose to authorize the work from within that. We'll begin work, etc. And it fully explain that journey, so the customer's not surprised when they get a text message at 11 o'clock in the morning saying, this is the work that's due, with ideally, obviously, a video from the technician, perhaps someone who they've never seen before. So I think you have to remove any element of surprise, and then giving them the kind of comfort and peace of mind by standardizing your process, I think is absolutely essential. And that's what we see. Like the great dealerships we work with have bulletproof processes, both human and kind of automated digital processes. And again, marrying those two things together, works brilliant. And you get this lovely standard approach. Like you say, you'll always get offered to go large in McDonald's. And in this instance, you'll always be offered to authorize all of your VHC reports. So all of the red, all of the amber. And it's amazing what more work you'll convert there. The key thing is don't assume the customer will say yes or no to any of that work.
I want to go back to that setting the agenda, we call it, because you're dead right. If we're not telling the customer that we're going to carry out a complimentary vehicle health check on your car, it's going to look like this. There'll be 3 different colors. And if it's green, it's good to go. If it's amber, it's something that's going to require attention before your next scheduled service. Now, if it's red, that's something that's going to require immediate attention. But Jack, what I'll do is I'll pop a call into you once the technician's had a chance to do that. Hey, listen, what's the best number to get you on this morning? Little things like it's got to be this morning, so we're not putting a call in the afternoon. Hey, from time to time, the tech might want to send you a video on something they want to draw your attention to. What's the best email address or phone number that we can send that through to you? They've got to do that because you hit the nail on the head for me. Otherwise, it's a cold call. And so often we get a service advisor saying, when you get a cold call at night, people trying to sell you the old PPI claim back or the Dieselgate scandal. When it's a call that comes out of the blue, it's like, no. But when people expect it, they know it's coming through. And then again, the other thing I love that you said there is when we put that call into the customer, as we thought, most areas are green and they're good to go. There's an amber area that I'll talk to you about that when you pick the car up. Now, listen, there's a couple of areas that are red. If the customer knows what's going to happen, it makes it so much easier to offer that. And I think that's where the service advisor, they're not setting the agenda to start with. It's that cold call. They're on the back foot to start with. And it doesn't matter how much they're asking the customer, it's going to be hard work. But also to your product specifically, again, I want to drive into this. I think so many service advisors have decided $2,500. That's a lot of money. It's just after Christmas. And they don't offer the tires that have got 3 millimeters on it because they think, oh no, look what else they're spending. And they're allowing the customer to take a ignorant risk, okay, as opposed to an educated decision.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I guess what we can draw a lot of conclusions from are some of the verbatims we see through our Trustpilot reviews, where we see quite emotive language used. So this was a lifesaver, the ability to spread the cost. It meant I could get the kids to school, I could still go to work. I don't know what I'd have done without you. We see lots of language around this, and what's really interesting is then we dive into the transaction in a bit more detail. So how much is that money? How much are they borrowing? What's the transaction for? Easy to assume it might be $2,500.
Just to stop you there for a second, for people listening in maybe Ireland, America, South Africa, Australia, can you quickly run through what Bumper is? Now, I know in the UK, I think you're in like the top 100 dealer groups, you're in the vast majority. Can you just give a quick flavor on what your product is? And we'll talk about, for people who haven't got it, just what you've seen in the business that's good and bad that they can get their service advisors to do.
Yeah, very good point. Take a slight step back. So essentially, we're a payments platform solely focused in automotive. In the process, the products, the people, everything we do is designed entirely for automotive transactions. So we're not a generalist BNPL, so buy now, pay later product. We are very much bespoke for this type of transaction because we recognize this type of transaction is potentially more complicated than buying a pair of trainers or jeans, and needs the flexibility in the process and the system to do so. So essentially, we're a buy now, pay later product. So that means the driver can spread the cost of their service or repair work, or indeed accessories, warranty products, add-on products, totally flexible. And what that allows them to do is choose anything from, say, 3, 4, 5, 6 installments, completely interest-free, giving them the flexibility and the peace of mind to be able to say yes to that work, or buy a premium tire rather than a mid-range or a budget tire. We then essentially put them through a credit process, make sure that we're a responsible lender, make sure that they've got a full affordability assessment. That gives them the ability to spread the cost. We then pay the retailer, i.e. the garage, the repair shop, the workshop up front, minus our transaction fee, and then we take on the risk and liability for that transaction. So again, for the dealership, it allows them to optimize their after-sales performance, their add-on performance, accessories performance, while ensuring that the customer has a great experience, because they can authorize this work. They can buy a premium tire versus mid-range, as I say, but they can pay for it over flexible monthly installments. That's one of our core products. We also then provide 2 other digital payment products. One is a payment link via SMS or email to pay on Apple Pay, Google Pay, or credit debit card. And then our most recent product that we've launched is open banking, or instant bank-to-bank transfer. So particularly useful on car sales, big average transaction values. And it's basically trying to modernize how a cash customer might pay currently, where you might have to ask them to set you up as a payee, sort code, account number, and make a bank transfer. Now we can facilitate that type of transaction in a full e-commerce journey. So you can make a payment. I as a customer could buy a car, make a payment that could be sat in the dealership's bank account within a matter of seconds. And I've done it all through my mobile banking as an e-commerce solution. So what I'm saying is that we're a fully encompassing payments platform. Whether you as a customer, as a driver of a vehicle, want to spread the cost of that, whether you want to pay in full. Ultimately, we can serve both of those, whether you are it's a digital journey that's fully embedded, or you're face to face with your dealership. Again, you can do so through QR codes, SMS links, email links, etc. Now we work across all brands. We work top down, bottom up. So we work with OEMs, we work with retailers, we work, as you touched upon, with 74, 75 of the AM 100 groups. So we massively over-index on the franchise dealer space. And ultimately, we want to do is ensure that we can help them optimize the opportunity that sits in front of them today, both in after sales and sales, but we're best known and our legacy sits more within after sales than it does in sales.
So what are the steps, Jack? You go from auto VHC, okay, and you roll that out everywhere. What are the steps from auto VHC into bumper? Where was the need spotted? How did that evolve? How did James get involved as well?
Yeah, it's actually quite a natural progression, as these things often are. So as you say, I was working for my parents' business, Auto VHC, a vehicle health check platform. Worked across dealers in the UK, Europe, and a few other markets. And what it did, obviously, was identify additional service and repair work they needed doing above and beyond the scheduled maintenance or diagnostic work. It then presented that, it priced it up, and ultimately you could see what was sold and not sold. That obviously is a massive opportunity for, I think, many dealerships. I think everybody will probably concede you can always look to improve that performance of what you convert of that work. And we saw that true across all of the dealerships that we worked with. And at the time, we were working with Peugeot Citroën as a brand, and one of their lean consultants there was looking at this in a lot of detail. How do we optimize this? Is there particular process improvements that we can make? But ultimately, if a customer doesn't have the money available or deems you too expensive, this is quite a difficult thing for you to sell. It's unexpected costs. It's stuff you're not prepared for, but potentially wrapped in a perception that the franchise dealer is always expensive, which we hear a lot, which actually is not necessarily the case.
So true.
And at the time, we were then introduced to James, who is co-founder of Bumper, who came up with the original concept. His background is in finance and tech businesses, and he'd been working on this concept of a very early buy now, pay later product, perhaps before the likes of Klarna became as well known as they are today. And he was speaking to this lean consultant at Peugeot Citroën as well at the time, and we were basically put together. We were put in touch by this guy at PSA who said, look, great concept, speak to these guys who know the sector quite well, have data that help point you in the right direction of the top possible outcomes. And that was the genesis for it. We then, as I say, spoke to some of our partners within Auto VHC, put some pilots in place, and the uptake was great. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, that early product that we produced was, the very definition of minimum viable product.
Okay.
But it was functional. The key thing about an MVP is it needs to be functional, and it was. And it gave us a strong indication that there is an appetite for this product, and it creates a good outcome for the dealer and a good outcome for the driver. And for us, we were super excited by that early uptake, and it really, I suppose, kind of accelerating from kind of that kind of initiation point to where we are today. As a business now, as I say, we work with about 4,200, 4,300 service and repair centres. And we've got a team of 70 in the business. We're funded by VC money, and as I say, we're best known for our work here in the UK. But last year we launched into Germany and Spain. We've got a couple of other markets that we're moving into. But the key thing is, kind of, without going on too much about this, the reason we're going to other markets is because we think the same problem that we've talked about just now exists ultimately really where anyone is driving a car. I don't think the average driver, wherever you are, is saving up a rainy day fund for the car to go wrong necessarily. That fund probably is a drawdown for all sorts of things that go wrong. The boiler breaks down, the roof falls off, etc. So when the car goes wrong, which is potentially 1 to 2 times a year, depending on how often you're getting your vehicle checked, that's a real critical key point, and that's really hard as a dealer to overcome if ultimately that customer doesn't have the funds available. That's why we see things having to resort to discount, customers only getting the very bare minimum done or nothing at all. And as a franchise dealer, you potentially lose them at that lucrative 3 to 4 year mark. So for us, that's where we really kind of started.
Again, I just want to go back into it. So often I think it's the service advisor makes the decision for the customer. Okay. And so many times, you've done it, Jack. I hear with our job day in, day out, we're listening to service advisors, real calls, real customers. And the number one objection handling technique I hear out there at the moment is, okay, I need this work, that work done to it. Oh, I can't afford that at the moment. Okay. You can't be ready at 4 o'clock. And now I say that sarcastically, but it is okay. And salespeople, and I call them salespeople because service advisors are selling, right? But they're not taught to turn around and say, hey, listen, can I just ask you, is it the cost of that tire or the time frame to fit it you're not sure about? Okay. They're not taught to turn around and say, a lot of my customers said they'd leave that air conditioning service until they found out it's the inactivity causes issues, not the activity. So they need the skills how to deal with that objection. But surely also the objection handling is, if you can't afford it, okay, Mr. Customer, here's another option for you. So that way it takes that away, because I believe that even if a service advisor thinks that if a customer can't afford it, they'll still talk about why it's so important to get that air conditioning service, why it's so important to put the premium tire on as opposed to the budget tire, because it really is a huge difference in stopping distance. And I think even if they're not using your product, my apologies, if they know they've got that down the background, okay, that they can, if the customer can't afford it, I think there's some people say, the one we train lots is promise me. If someone says, nah, I'll leave those tires because they've got 3 millimeters on it. Again, we'd say, well, it's only got 1.4 millimeters until that tire is illegal, which is the thickness of the credit card. I can ask you, is it the cost of that tire or is it the time frame? It's often costs. Well, then that's on the premium tire. But listen, on this occasion, why don't I look at a low cost alternative? No, I'll leave it. We would train, well, listen, would you do me a favor? Even if we don't do that tire, would you promise me you get that tire changed between now and the end of the month? It's only having the thickness of the credit card till it's illegal. You're doubling your braking distance on a wet road. On a dry road, it's 5 double-decker buses extra stopping distance. But if they've got the ability to then say, and by the way, Mr. Customer, you can spread that over 0% over the 3, 6, 9 months or however long you go, that's got to give that service advisor more confidence to offer this stuff all the time. I keep on going back to, I don't believe service advisors offer 100% of what's needed to 100% of the customers 100% of the time. Do you have any evidence that's helping the confidence of that service advisor?
Yeah, we do. One of the things that I kind of draw upon there is we do things that we call engagement days.
Okay.
Yes, they're there to kind of serve our benefit as much as the dealers, but what we want to test is what is the true outcome when you get total buy-in from a service team that today we're going to talk about everything on that VHC report. Because like you say, there's a degree of concern about conveying a lot of that work. And on those days, what we say is that today, everything that you offer, you're going to offer straight up the option to authorize that work today for the full amount. So that whole retail job card. Now you're also going to give them the ability to spare the cost if they want to. And the really interesting thing is, 100% of customers do not go down the bumper route. I wish they did, but that's not reality, because we know actually lots of customers just want to pay in full. That's fine. But the joy of it is actually seeing how many customers do say yes to work that day without having to resort to discount or talking about the red only work. Because what we're seeing is that as a service advisor, I've now got confidence that I've got a tool in my back pocket that I'm going to talk about if and the customer is aware overtly of it. But I know I can talk about the whole VHC report because I know the customer has, whichever way you look at this, but has some flexibility in order to authorize all of that work. So if you're saying, look, it's £600, Mr. Customer, a lot of them will probably think that's a lot of money. But if you say, look, Mr. Customer, I've got some good news, the red, etc., blah, 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 it's £600 or it's £100 a month for the next 6 months. You're happy for us to proceed with that today? You'll get some customers that go down the bumper route, which is great. They obviously need to, and they'll benefit from that. Equally, you'll get lots that go, I'm not interested in spreading the cost, but yeah, I'll get all of that done today. Yeah. It's such an interesting outcome. And for us, we see it's around 1 in 6 to 1 in 5 go down the bumper route when we've done these days. The rest just say yes to the work getting authorized. And in a lot of cases, they actually don't use bumper at all that day, but they sell a load more work. So to your point,
they're offering it.
That the material outcome. So we've done hundreds of these days and we see the same outcome. Yes, I'm trying to serve our purpose, but more is to say there is a really positive way to sell more of your VHC work on the day.
Yeah, so true. And listen, I got to say, one of my bugbears, I have no evidence from this, and maybe you have from your experience with Auto VHC and again, what you're doing with Bumper. But I passionately do believe the number one point of defection to the independent dealers. I know you represent independent dealers as well, but our work is all franchise dealers. Yeah, I think it's tires. What happens is the service advisor turns around and they deal with the tire sale incorrectly. Your tire's got 2 millimeters on it. Would you like us to put a tire on? How much is that going to cost? 180. Oh, that's too much. I'll leave it. I'll leave it means they're going to go straight down to Quick Fit. Okay. And Quick Fit's just not going to do the tire jack. They're going to do the tire. They're going to do all make servicing. They'll be on Quick Fit's database. And let me tell you, they are brilliant at marketing the customers when the MOT, the NCT test is due in Ireland, the roadworthy certificate in Australia. They're so good at that. And that's that point of defection where we lose that customer. I don't believe it's just when the warranties run out. I don't believe that. They go to the independent because they think they're going to be cheaper because we haven't dealt with that sale in the right way. Again, we're going to give the service advisors confidence to offer 100% of what's required, 100% of the time to customers.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think for a lot of them, they probably don't see themselves as tire retailers, and they're quite happy for that to go. I know there's processes and products in place to kind of mitigate that happening. For us, I guess whether you're a franchise or an independent or a rapid fit, what we're about, and as I say, we're massively indexing the franchise dealer, it's about capturing as much of the work today. What you don't sell today, you're probably massively unlikely to sell thereafter. So can you capture as much as possible today? And that's where the amber work is really, really key as well. Because otherwise some people may view it as a shopping list to go elsewhere. But the amber work is key because particularly with our product, if it's perhaps not due today, because it's not below the legal limit and it's not deemed safety related, but it's due in 3 months' time, why not get the customers to get it done today? Spread the cost over 3 to 6 months, so you're paying over a longer period of time, but you capture that work today and you reduce the chance of them going elsewhere. And I think for me, what this goes back to is the overall after-sales process and helping to support the service advisors conversation. And the way that we talk about this a lot is touch points, i.e. what are the various customer touch points through that after-sales journey, and giving them an awareness that they've got this flexibility early on means that they don't have the concern going into this conversation. Like you say, you talk quite rightly about this kind of cold call concept. You remove that as well. So have you got it on your website? Have you got it in your pre-check-in journey? Have you got the ability for them to get pre-approved? So through as the customer get pre-approved for, let's say, I don't know, £2,500 worth of credit, they can then draw down on that credit through the VHC journey. So they already go into this transaction with confidence. And we see some amazing outcomes off the back of this. And then equally, whatever you don't sell that day, is it embedded into your follow-up comms, your predictive campaigns?
So, Jack, have I get this right now? So you're recommending introducing a bumper right at the beginning. I've got that naively wrong. I would think you were bringing it up only when a customer says, I can't afford it. Have I got that right? Are you talking about bringing it right from setting the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. Because for us, I think it's a really, really nuanced, difficult conversation to know when to bring this in through a VHC conversation. How do you know who needs this and who doesn't, or who would appreciate and who wasn't? Even if they're driving an expensive car, they look wealthy. You have no idea what the background is. Most people live to a lot of people live beyond their means, but you should be living relatively kind of within your means, but live paycheck to paycheck. So any expenditure that comes outside of that, even if you're earning £100,000 a year, can become a problem, right? So for us, the best way to address that is to treat all things equal, a bit like your McDonald's approach. Is it on your website? I mean, I'm not revealing anything that's not kind of out there. Arnold Clark, great example of this. We work with all of their businesses. It's on their website. They talk about it overtly. Customers are aware of it. It's through the pre-check-in journey. It's through the VHC journey, fully embedded. Both are pay later and pay now products. The customer knows they have this available. And ultimately, from our point of view, we see right from a volume through to a premium brand as equal opportunity. We see, amazing engagement. In fact, our number one brand that we see month in, month out is BMW. I think for a lot of people, they'd assume BMW customer perhaps doesn't need this, but actually what we see is that they absolutely do. For a lot of people, it might have been an aspirational purchase. For others, it's a massive convenience play. But if that means they're more likely to come back to you again, why would you not let the customer spread the cost? For us, it's not just about saying, I think I could have sold that work without bumper. Well, that's really difficult to assess. But actually, even if you could have potentially, and the customer might walk away going, damn, that was expensive, but, I got a BMW. So maybe that's always going to be the case. Or they walk away going, maybe I could have afforded that, but that was an unbelievable experience. I'm definitely going to go back there again because it gave me that flexibility to spread the cost through right past Christmas. Or as we've got the cost of living crisis biting really hard. And you touched upon how people, start to bin gym memberships and Netflix accounts. Well, discretionary spend on vehicles, like you say, is one of the earliest things to go.
Mm-hmm.
We're already in that kind of discretionary area. People, believe they can make a choice on this. This is safety related work. This duty of care work. So for us, going back to it, it's all about process. Are you making the customer aware at the various touch points that you have this available? And I think we use the high street as a great example, that if you're buying, a laptop, or actually even lower value items, that's, trainers and t-shirts, etc., they don't wait for you to check out, wait for you to not buy, and then offer you the ability to spread the cost. It's a marketing tool, this. Buy now, pay later does two fundamental things. It gets people over your threshold, i.e. into your dealership, and it helps them to be able to approve more work. You're only going to do that if you're making the customer aware of this early on, or else A, they may never come to your dealership, or B, they'll only authorize the very, very, well, actually probably gets a step before that, to your point about service advisors. The service advisor is only talking to them about the very urgent red work.
Yes.
Because the customer doesn't know this product's available.
And go one stage further. The objection handling, I've got that wrong. I forgot about this. The objection, someone says, I can't afford 600. They go straight into the service manager and say, how much can you discount that work for? What can we do the labor rate for? And I imagine they're just giving away potential profit at that stage there that, clearly they could still get full margin on. Minus costs, obviously. I'm sure you don't do it for free.
Yeah. We're not a charity, sadly. But I think one of the interesting things, I haven't got the stats to hand, it's an incredibly high number, though, that the online service booking platforms see as an abandon rate once the customer goes through the journey and sees the price of the service they're trying to book. The abandonment rate is significant. I'm sure in certain instances it's north of sort of 50% or so. Well, so if the customer there at that point there is getting jumpy around price, and that's the service and the cost they expect, how do you think they're going to react to stuff that they don't expect when the vehicle's on site? And to use extreme language, they may even feel like they're being almost held to ransom. So it's important that you can address that, give the customer the peace of mind early on that I'm a dealership that's going to really help you today, whether that is a pure affordability play or a convenience play. If it enhances the customer experience and it increases their chance of coming to you again, for me, that's vital, particularly as there's this kind of shifting dynamic that I don't think anyone quite knows yet how it's going to settle around the agency model.
Yeah.
And amplifying your relationship through the service journey probably becomes more relevant than other. And that, again, is further accelerated by, as I said, we talked about the cost of living crisis, but the new vehicle supply that's probably meaning, well, we're seeing the data already, people are holding onto their vehicles for longer. I think across mainland Europe, the average age of vehicles in the last 5 years has gone to 11 years. People are holding onto that car for longer. The repairs are getting bigger and more expensive. So what do you do to address that? I think products like ours, being front-footed with the customer and positive with the customer, absolutely essential. And the businesses that we work with, as I say, I quoted Arnold Clark there, but right through from for the likes of Sytner, Pendragon, through to the smaller businesses which have amazing processes. For us, it's about doing those two things really well. So it's supporting a digital journey with a really, really good.
I go back as well. It's retention of that customer, because the car, people are holding on to their cars longer because they can't afford to get a new car, or maybe can't get it, and that's definitely the case. But my concern is retention into the franchise world, because those people are going to the Freds in the shed. They are going to the independents because they think they're cheaper. Service advisors think they're cheaper. Customers think they're cheaper. They're not, okay, when you look into everything we do. But again, this is a tool just to retain that customer. So when they do change their car, my concern is once a customer goes to the independent, these independents are great. They're going to do absolutely everything, and we've lost that customer.
I think one of the ways that probably to best articulate that is if I just kind of share some brief numbers that we see as a typical outcome, which is a 6.1-year-old vehicle uses our product. So this is franchise sector, 6.1 years old, spending just over £750. So old car, big bill. Yep. And then our average Trustpilot score is 4.9 out of 5. So old car, big bill, happy customer. For us, that's a really, really powerful dynamic, and one that we don't believe is that easy to achieve. Even if you've got great people process, you've got great tech, you've got to provide payment flexibility these days. So for us, we think we can't solve all things to all people, but we really think we're a very powerful tool to address, that older car that's coming through the workshop, and equally, how do you deal with a customer that's having to spend unexpected costs on that older car? That's a really, really tricky situation that we can resolve. Jack,
I want to get your views on these kiosks. Now, again, people listen to this in South Africa, Canada, Australia. I'm sure they're happening everywhere in the world. I've just not seen them other places yet. Okay. COVID times. I haven't traveled too many places over the last 3 years. But these kiosks, I love them, as I said before, because I go in there and listen, I'm in the industry, okay? But I'll sit there and go, you know what? I do use oil. I'm in a diesel, you know, it runs on devil's juice. I always have to top up oil between services. I've got a variable servicing car there. And sometimes it's just not offered, or it's jammed in the boot and they've jammed it into the bill without me actually knowing it. But, you know, last time I went there, I said, yep, I'll have one of those. Okay. I actually even got my car fully washed last time. Okay. Inside and out, do a proper vac. Yeah. It was going to be, it wasn't a lot. It's through a BMW dealership. I think they wanted 30 quid or something like that. I was like, you know what? If you're going to do it properly, I will go ahead and do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Halliwell Jones. And I'll do it. Are you seeing any integration with those systems to introduce when people are booking in? Are you doing any work with those now?
Yeah, we are absolutely. You know, the likes of CheckVic, eDynamics. I know there's a few exponents of it. We've got integrations that allow the customer to say yes to those additional items, and also spread the cost or get pre-approved to kind of use that same credit for those items that they're pre-approving, and then use us through that the VHC journey thereafter. And again, it goes back to those touch points early on. If that's the first interaction that customer's having, give them the flexibility, give them the confidence they can say yes to these items, plus anything else that may occur through that journey. And that same concept applies we're embedded into the vehicle health check platform. So all of the VHC platforms, most of the DMSs we're integrated into that mean every customer gets offered it every single time. And it doesn't become the discretion of the service advisor at all. So from our point of view, we recognise service advisors are busy people, probably more so than ever.
Oh yes.
You know, there's been a lot of very, very tight kind of resource control, I suppose. And from our point of view, we know they've got a lot of systems to log into. So how can we make that light touch and intuitive and make sure we're almost acting like a digital service advisor, which is why we've embedded it into the VHC tools. And again, see really positive outcomes. So I talked about our average transaction value of £750. We see an almost similar number through our fully integrated journeys. So we've got something that allows you to have a digital service advisor, for want of a better phrase, sells as much as a service advisor would, and creates a great customer outcome. And what it's doing, going back to our earlier conversation about Jenny, we're able to address those customers that are happy to approve all that work digitally. And you can then have a face-to-face conversation or a telephone conversation with Jenny that takes up more time. So yeah, the self-check-in terminals, I saw some great ones actually out when we were out in Germany that sits outside of the dealership. So that's to facilitate a proper 24-hour journey and process. Again, that puts an importance on how can you also then fulfill, actually, I take a step back. The technicians, obviously, then you've got perhaps shift journeys, but also can you transact with that customer 24 hours? Well, you're going to need some sort of payment product to do so. That's where we sit in that. Now, I know there's physical and kind of safety constraints around 24-hour pick up and drop off. But there's a shifting landscape. There's customers that are so used to, you're perhaps the younger set that are coming through and will form a larger part. They're so used to a more digital way of interacting with retailers that I think you've got to be able to address that. And we know fundamentally our core product, 1 in 4 customers, UK customers, have used our buy now, pay later product before, not just with automotive, but elsewhere. They already know about this type of product. It's just about facilitating it.
Yeah, I suppose it's not just the product, your product. And again, who can blame you to talk about your own product? I get that, and I ask the question, and it has to be done. But I just think in this new social media world, the digital world, we're becoming less social. And what I mean by that is you go to Tesco's, the queue behind the self-checkout is longer than the one where you go and speak to Betty. You go to McDonald's, okay? You go to the big iPad where you order the meal yourself to start with. First time I looked at it, I thought, why am I doing this? But you go and do that because you know you're going to get exactly what you want, as opposed to Dave, who can't get the order right there. I suppose that is the generation that's coming through, and people expect just to go click, 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 got what I want, because we've all got busy lives. And we need to move on.
A guy in our office actually said he reckoned that self-checkouts at supermarkets was the greatest invention of the 21st century. You know, he was absolutely raving about that. It's one of his, he's really, really fond of. But to your point, it's just such a smooth way of transacting. and creates a great process.
But again, look at these Amazon shops. I'm sure you've been into these Amazon shops where you go in there and there's no checkout. You just walk out there because it's got cameras everywhere and it knows they're speeding that up because they know if they can make that transaction nice and easy. I would argue, though, the block on those is when you go into the store to start with, okay, not coming out of them. But it's, again, making that transaction quick and easy for people to make a decision. I'll go back to make an educated decision as opposed to an ignorant risk. And listen, what about people who haven't got your system? They're listening in Australia at the moment, say, listen, no one out here is doing this. What mistakes do you think service advisors are making and that you see day in, day out there, that a service manager, listen to this, in a different market that hasn't got your product, what mistakes are they making and what recommendations would you say, go back and have a look at this, just drawing on some of your experience working with service departments around the world?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of, are they thinking at the customer or are they thinking about what is best for that vehicle and the safety of that customer? I think too often they try to put themselves in the shoes of that customer and how would you receive this news? It goes back to being very apologetic about the work that's required. But from our point of view, if you're in that headspace, that becomes incredibly difficult to turn that into a positive conversation as soon as you start to talk negatively about it. That, for me, again, it is further enhanced by and this is probably going a bit into it, but the way that you load your workshop that day. I think as you get later and later in that day, there's almost just a desperate demand to get that vehicle out of your workshop. So they almost don't talk about the work for fear of having to say to the customer, we have to keep the car overnight because we're late in the day now. So for us, we see, and it's not always difficult because we appreciate customers drop cars off at different times in the day. If you can get that vehicle on the ramp quickly, if you can get the VHC done at the very start of that journey, and obviously utopia is
yes, please. Oh, yes.
The golden hour, cars on the ramp still, you get authority on that work and you get it done. However, we often see that VHC journey can get later and later in the day. And as a result, that puts pressure on everybody. The technicians start to rush. They perhaps don't start to identify work because they know that car needs to be back to the customer that day. They communicate work almost sometimes deliberately late so that the customer will say, look, I'll have to leave it because I need the car back tonight. I think that puts massive undue stress and pressure on the performance of that workshop. And that's why those conversations get even more apologetic or they get later and shorter. And like you say, you get met with an okay, no problem, great, car's going to be ready then at 5 o'clock because I'm not going to have to do that extra work. So for me, it goes back to how you're going to load that workshop. Give yourself the time in your diary to identify the work and actually do the work. And the performance of that will then feed through into your numbers.
Isn't so true. The problem with upselling at the moment, so many times we've got service advisors saying, we haven't got time to upsell. I mean, to book a car for a service, it's easily going to be 3 or 4 weeks. Someone's got a problem with their car. We can't get it in to the 24th of 2 months down the track there. And they're saying, actually, I haven't got time to upsell anyway because we can't do the work that we've got there at the moment. I mean, that's a real issue, I think, there. But are you seeing the same?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's true of many dealerships, and obviously there's variables that are somewhat out of their control. Whether that's parts that don't come through on time. But from our side, like where you can nail that process, and I think that's supported massively by tech. And when you can support that process, for us, we see a really, really fully functioning, slick workshop. And I think that allows you then to finesse the performance of it. But ultimately, if you're kind of working through a backlog and kind of racing against yourself every day, you're never going to create an environment that either feels like a relaxed, positive environment to come into as a customer or to work in as a service advisor. So you definitely got to address that early on.
Jack, very, very interesting. Love the idea of your product. You know that some of our clients are working with it already, and it really does make things so smooth. A couple of questions to finish this up on. Other markets, people listen to this around the world. What plans do you have? I know you talked about Germany integration before. Do you have other countries you're planning to launch into at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're in Germany, we're in Spain, led very much by some of our tech partners that have carried us across borders, many of our OEM introductions as well. We're launching into the Netherlands in the next sort of 6 weeks, I'd say, 6 to 8 weeks. That's very much on the near term. And then we've got a couple of other mainland European markets that are due probably Q3, Q4 of this year. We're just kind of refining some of those. But as I say, the opportunity we think exists much more beyond just the mainland European market. So we think that the average person isn't saving up for their car to go wrong. So we're looking at a number of other markets further afield from that. As I said, we're supported by some brilliant VCs and institutional investors and CVCs from some of the brands, the likes of Jaguar Land Rover, Porsche Ventures, etc., that are really eager for us to work across a much broader base. But what we want to ensure we do is create a really sustainable, sticky product. We don't want to jump from market to market. We want to make sure we leave a really, really strong legacy that, what we feel like we've achieved here in the UK, where we've really helped to kind of shift the way that a lot of this work is presented and sold to customers. So yeah, some exciting plans ahead through 2023.
Cool. How do people get hold of you, Jack? What's the easiest way for them to find you and Bumper?
So all the usual sources, our website, which is bumper.co, or in Europe, bumper.co.uk, in the UK, and then through LinkedIn. We're pretty prolific on LinkedIn, shameless self-publicists, and again through our website. Feel free to contact me directly. My email is jack.allman, ALLMAN, @bumper.co.uk. So again, we would love to talk to anybody that feels that we have a place in their after sales or indeed sales departments to kind of optimize the transactions that take place digitally.
Brilliant. Really appreciate that. Thanks a lot for your time.
Cheers, Simon. Loved it.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.